Welcome to Chapter 17, which is mostly the urinary system. The urinary system eliminates water and salts and wastes. We have two kidneys. They filter the blood. 25% of our cardiac output goes to the kidneys and produce urine from the components they remove from the blood. You need to be able to identify the urinary tract, which includes the kidneys, the ureters, and the bladder, and urethra. So here are the two kidneys. These two tubes are the ureters, and peristalsis will push the urine down to the urinary bladder for storage, and the urethra will remove the urine from the body. The urinary system adjusts our blood volume and pressure. If we have high blood pressure, it may be because we have too much blood, and so some of that fluid is removed in the urine. It regulates the concentrations of certain electrolytes, such as sodium, potassium, and chloride ions. It stabilizes our blood acidity content, or pH. It conserves valuable nutrients such as amino acids and glucose, and it removes drugs and toxins and metabolic wastes. Kidneys are retroperitoneal. The hilum is the indentation where the renal artery, renal vein, and renal nerves and ureter enter the kidney. So there's the hilum here. This area right there. The kidney is surrounded by a very fibrous capsule. The outer portion of the kidney is called the cortex, and the inner portion is called the medulla. You can see these pyramid-shaped structures. They are called the renal pyramids. The nephrons are found in this whole region here, the cortex and the medulla, and they will produce the urine. The urine will drain into the minor calyx and the major calyx, and then into the renal pelvis and down the ureter. This is the nephron, which is the functional unit of the kidney, about a million per kidney, and it is the filtering unit. So there are 3 steps you will learn, and the 3 steps are filtration, absorption, and secretion. So step number 1, the filtration takes place at the renal corpuscle. Right here is the renal corpuscle. Now the purple is part of the nephron, and the red is part of the blood system. So it's a capillary network here called the glomerulus. So you may recall these terms afferent and efferent. Afferent is incoming and efferent is outgoing. So the blood is going to come in through a tiny blood vessel, an arteriole, the afferent arteriole into this glomerulus, and the substances will be removed from the blood and become what is called filtrate and pass down through the tubule. Okay. Now this part of the tubule here that is close to the glomerulus is the proximal convoluted tubule. Here's the loop, the nephron loop, and then the distal convoluted tubule. The nephron is microscopic, and it consists of the renal corpuscle, which is the filtering unit. Inside the renal corpuscle is the glomerulus, or the capillaries, and kind of a little cup that the filtrate, the substances come out of the blood and into the tubule, and they become what is called the filtrate. And then the tubule will modify and carry the filtrate. So be able to identify the renal corpuscle, the PCT, the nephron loop, and the DCT. Just past the distal convoluted tubule is what is called the collecting duct, and that will collect the urine. And then a papillary duct, not that important. So here's our collecting duct. So here's the whole unit, the nephron and the collecting system. So by the time it gets through the nephron, it is urine, and then the urine is simply collected and drains into the renal pelvis. What part of the nephron absorbs virtually all organic nutrients? The proximal convoluted tubule. There are two different types of nephrons, and we're not going to worry about those. Cortical refers to the cortex, that outer portion of the kidney. So some begin up there in the cortex, so they're cortical nephrons, and the rest are juxtamedullary nephrons. But again, don't worry about those. And here you can see the cortical nephron and the juxtamedullary nephron. So the renal artery is what's going to deliver blood to the kidney, and it branches. Look at all these branches, none of which you need to know. Thank heavens for that. But here you can see these branches. So here's our renal artery coming in, and then branching, branching, branching all the way through, because every single nephron has to have a tiny arteriole. It has to branch and enter every single nephron. Now, so the afferent arteriole brings substances in that are filtered out, but then it continues as the efferent arteriole, which becomes the peritubular capillary, this mesh of capillaries surrounding the nephron. Here we'll skip this. We just don't need to know about the cortical nephron. We do need to know a little bit about the wastes. So the wastes, they're basically three organic wastes. Remember, if something is organic, it contains carbon and hydrogen. So when we break down our proteins, we knock nitrogen off of it, and that nitrogen becomes what is called urea. That's going to produce that ammonia-like smell in old diapers. Creatinine is generated by our skeletal muscles, and uric acid is generated by a breakdown of nucleic acids. So urea, creatinine, and uric acid are the main organic wastes in our urine. This is comparing the levels of different electrolytes and nutrients in the plasma and the urine. So you can see here, look at glucose. Well, glucose, we have a lot in our plasma and very, very little in the urine. So glucose, if it is in the urine, you've got diabetes. So we can test our urine for different issues. And look how it concentrates this organic waste, urea. So it is kind of interesting to look at the different levels of the wastes and electrolytes in the plasma and the urine. So know these three processes of urine formation: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Step 1, filtration. Blood pressure forces water and solutes across membranes of the glomerular capillaries into the nephron, into the tubule. Then that becomes what's called the filtrate. So as that filtrate moves through the tubule, some solutes and water are reabsorbed back into the blood. And then as that filtrate continues moving through the tubule, some solutes are secreted from the blood back into the tubule. Which of the following is not one of the three primary organic wastes? That would be lactic acid. So here's urine formation. It's the ping pong effect here. So the first step is filtration, where our blood pressure kind of forces solutes into the nephron. And then as the filtrate moves through the nephron, some of these solutes are reabsorbed. So think about what's going to be reabsorbed. Amino acids. We don't want to excrete amino acids in our urine. Our body uses them. Glucose. We don't want to excrete glucose in our urine. Our body needs it. So these nutrients are going to be reabsorbed. And then certain wastes may be secreted finally back into urine to be removed from the body. I can't tell if those are gophers or what those are. So balancing fluid movements, there is a balance between reabsorption and secretion. It varies in the nephron regions, regulating the final volume and solution concentrations of urine. You might want to just pause the slide here and read through this slide. Again, you don't need to know what's taking place at each one of these different portions. Water versus electrolytes versus sodium versus chlorine versus organic nutrients. So here we are back at the glomerular capsule, and the afferent arteriole is coming in, forming this glomerulus, and there's our efferent arteriole taking blood out. That will form the peritubular capillaries. Well, right here, at this region here, is an area called the juxtaglomerular apparatus. It's these cells right here. And when the pressure falls in this area, when the blood pressure falls, filtration will not be accurate. And so the juxtaglomerular apparatus will release renin to increase the blood pressure. You do recall ADH, antidiuretic hormone, released from the pituitary. Well, remember, a diuretic is a water pill. So an antidiuretic is not going to make you urinate, it's going to make you retain water. So if there were no if you didn't produce ADH, it wouldn't make you retain water and you would have a lot of urine. Alcohol suppresses our ADH. So after drinking alcohol, you have a high urine content. You don't need to know your numbers here. Osmotic concentration. If you're making a lot of urine, it's called polyuria. If you're making no urine, it's anuria. Aliguria is some urine. Which of the following can perform all the essential functions of the kidney? That would be the nephron. It does everything the kidney needs to do, that is, make the urine. Which of the following is not part of a kidney lobe? That's the hilum. Which of the following is not part of the nephron? This is a little trickier. That is the collecting duct. Here are some general characteristics of normal urine.